Valcha, welcome back. This is video number 4 of the Custodians by Dolores Cannon. Parts 1 and 2 are last weekend. So we're on chapter 12. Janice meets her real father. So Cannon does a new session with Janice. Janice puts her into a trance, and Janice describes a beautiful auditorium that's filling up with ETs of all sorts, and you know, they say things to each other like, "Peace be with you." This guy enters, and she recognizes him as the guy who used to visit her when she was little. She cries, and she says to Cannon, "This is like my father. He is my father." And he says, "Yeah, you know, she is his real biological daughter." And suddenly, Janice speaks to Cannon with his voice. And he's there, he tells Cannon, to ask Janice questions. He says to Cannon that Janice is at a crucial stage, that many people in the auditorium are there to learn from her, that she's going to exchange information, and this exchange of energy is just as necessary for Janice as it is for the people attending. Some of their questions are mundane because they can experience things from her answer. They want to learn about the earth. So the first question is, what does chocolate milk taste like? I just can't believe that. And Janice says something that Cannon can't hear because it's communicated on a different level. Cannon asks about Janice's mother, and she's told that she can't be informed about how Janice got pregnant. It was sneaked into the normal process, and I have big question marks here, so whatever Cannon was told made no sense to me. Janice always knew all of this in her subconscious. Her E.T. biofather had to stop coming to visit her as a child because she got too emotional and confused, and it was traumatic for her every time he had to leave. It made her want to go home, and she felt alone. ETs kept asking her to explain violence in this auditorium. They don't understand violence. They could never be violent. It's not in their capacity, and they don't understand humans. Many of them are not even physical. They're on a mental plane, and they don't even understand pain. The ETs can relive what Janice has in her mind, and they understand, but not all humans agree. And not all humans agree to be involved with them. And then they understand the motivation of people through Janice's mind, and they get the point that not all humans are violent and not all humans want nuclear power. And but in their world, everybody is responsible for each, and they have trouble understanding separation. Everybody, all are all for one and one for all. They don't understand why Janice just doesn't stop people, just stop them. Janice was born at the end of the war, World War II, to help balance energy because she brought such strong energy work to the planet. I thought that was an interesting thing to think about. You know, people often ask, why do we have to watch all this terrible stuff going on in the world? Well, it may be that we're here to try to balance out the energy. It may be that our impulse away from war, our desire not to see suffering and pain, that energy is what the world needs. So it's something to think about. Cannon asks to speak to Janice, and when she's sleeping and working with the ETs, are there any other beings that she feels around her? Like people that she knows, people from Earth that she knows in the physical life. And the answer from Janice is yes. Sometimes when she's asleep, asleep in real life, working with the ETs energetically, there are other human beings from Earth around her. Yes, Canon is told that one of Janice's jobs is to heal the energy of the planet and to keep us from self-destructing. I'm just dying to know what kind of a person she seems like. It's so interesting. If Janice and the ETs and others were not doing this work, the disaster would be much worse. It's like they're doing emergency maintenance, Canon is told. But they're not allowed to completely interfere with the ultimate destiny, so it's a balance. They have to strike a balance between helping to mitigate the damage, but not preventing free will. The rules are universal, unchanging, and eternal. The rule of non-interference. They can help, assist, instruct, but they cannot direct or interfere directly. They can interfere on behalf of one of their own to help protect it, but they can't interfere with humans. And apparently, experimenting, studying, and helping humans who are, unbeknownst to themselves, higher elevated beings, that's okay because that's the will of the person that they're interacting with. The rules are from source, which is unlimited energy in the purest essence state. And Canon is told, some people would say God. We can experience it as they do, but it's up to us. The rules, for example, nonviolence, they can't be involved in the negativity of the planet. They can only react with the opposite. They can't be negative. Then there's an interruption in this communication because Janice is done talking with the audience, and a voice tells Canon it's better for Janice to learn all of this stuff subconsciously, and she probably should not listen to the tape that Canon is making because it might upset her. The voice tells the tape to Janice, when you think you feel me with you, I really am. This is her father. I really am. You can call on me for help. And Canon remarks they have the same parent-child bond as people do. They miss and love each other. Part of the job of his type of alien is to be an example of love and emotion to other types of ETs. He discussed communication with Janice at night while she sleeps. He does it often. Janice gets physically ill before catastrophes because of the energy. So if there's an earthquake, she gets sick before that. So he's come to give her protection, to buck her up. Her connection to the ley lines and the earth energy is affected by these disasters, and it lingers. She is a conduit and a receiver. And there are many people working the way she does. They're aware but not fully aware yet. It's not the time yet. And they are also beings not of this earth. These people are severely affected beyond most people. It's hard for them to get out of bed sometimes. It's a trauma. They know the frustration of what the earth could be if we did the right thing. And Canon is reminded again that not all T's are fully evolved. They're on their own journey. So this guy, Janice's ET father, gave Janice plenty of intention, dedication, honesty, straightforwardness. He says he has not failed his children. They have developed these traits and they have choices. He's from a physical planet in another galaxy and travels by thought. He is the ruler of that planet, and all people of his planet feel the duty to help. They don't have our problems, so they volunteer to help. They consume light. They get energy from light. And they can experience food if they want, just for the entertainment. They have sexual reproduction and they have babies, but they're born being capable. They're not born helpless the way humans are. They don't need to learn to eat and how to tie their shoes. They develop much faster. These beings don't die, but they choose to transition and return to source. He tells Janice that he will always be with her, and if you need strength to remember, we are as one. And Janice doesn't want to come back. So when she finally does, her hands are discolored. And they look it up. They find a doctor and they look it up. And it's called venous obstruction. And nobody knows why. So they're going to look into it and you'll find out. So chapter 13, the ultimate experience. In the following months, Cannon has many sessions with Janice, and she was increasing her training with the ET beings, the energy beings, and all this is in the book, The Convoluted Universe, which has several more volumes. Sorry about that. We'll do them, but not today. Cannon did get to ask the alien energy doctor why Janice's hands were discolored, and she's told that a circulatory system problem happened because her physical body didn't adapt right away to the energy levels that she was working on. And the interrelation of energy in her circulatory system was giving her problems, but they wouldn't let it harm her, but there was a visible effect. In the next session, it didn't happen, and also she didn't experience, Cannon didn't experience that heat fluctuation. So Cannon transcribed her tapes so she could have a paper copy, and she has 2 sets of taped copies she's made of the tapes. She keeps the originals, and she sends one to the guy called Lou, who's her helper, and then she sends a copy to Janice, and they all disappeared. And that's because the aliens told her that she would not be able to publish until the time was right. Lou and Janice couldn't find them, but eventually, several years later, everybody's copies reappeared all at the same time. So this is the last session that Janice did in 1991. She has a new boyfriend for several years, and his name is Ken, and he's in the military, and he doesn't know all this about Janice. So they're at a motel, and he had to go to work. He had to go back to the base because he's in the military, so he leaves her sleeping, and the maid knocks on the door and comes into the room, and it's full of flashing lights, and the maid starts screaming. Janice was asleep, and she was woken by the screams and the lights. So she remembered that part of it. The maid was completely freaked out, and so she asks Cannon to figure out what happened while she's in trance. So puts her under, and Cannon says, what happened? And on tape, they notice later that there's this weird motor sound, but they didn't hear it in the room while they were taping. So Janice remembers that she and Ken woke up in the night, and he said, it feels like we just got back here from out of this world. That's famous last words when your girlfriend's an alien. So they both felt like they'd been physically in the bed, but otherwise had gone elsewhere. It was very strange. They felt disassociated. At 4:30 in the morning, Ken had to go to the base. Janice worried that he wasn't really fully awake, and he opened the door to leave, and she saw all the fog outside, and he saw no fog. He left, and she went back to sleep, but she wasn't really sleeping. She was gone. The next thing she knew, the maid was screaming, lights were flashing, and Janice had not really woken up. The lights flashed until some of them sort of exploded. So Cannon takes her back to the night before to explore what happened. And they got in bed, but they didn't go to sleep. They suddenly both just found themselves on a ship. And they found themselves in a sacred room that was reserved for spiritual elevation. Then this voice that Cannon is talking to is no longer Janice's voice. It changes. And the voice tells Cannon the room is a replication of the future. It reflects the spiritual state of the galaxies and universes. It's only on this ship, and only elevated people who share specific common purpose are allowed in the room. And the ship is everywhere. So this is an 8-sided room. There are curved exterior rooms where people are taught. They are integrated there physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, both causal and astral. And sometimes they have molecular reconstruction. It's not your not your average day spa. So people are allowed for different reasons to learn, to teach, to integrate. They're all there for different reasons. And some things that are taught are the mechanics of light and sound and the energy of molecular reconstruction, dematerialization, bilocation, anomalies in time, parallel universes, space in relationship to particles, energy and matter. It sounds like physics class. Movement through time and space, travel in relationship to light. These are all things that are taught. Some come in the physical, some come without the physical, some can have their physical changed while they're there. Teachers and avatars can change into ETs and referee and help bring the energy back into the physical. So it's a busy place. 100% of Earth people okay, what did I write here? Because this is not making sense. 100% of Earth people go to other ships. These Earth people are only partly Earth. Okay. So people from the Earth are taken to ships, and there are other ships that they're taken to. And they're only partly Earth human beings, and some of them have mastered development in areas that let them function on different levels. It's like they're elevated from humans. Their actual genetics are elevated. And so they're able to be at different levels at the same time. And if they develop enough, they can be aware of what's going on. But some people don't even know that they're doing this. It's way past the normal UFO experience. Like the everyday UFO experience. Their function is to maintain the high vibration rate when they come back on Earth to affect the energy. They will use it in the times to come. And some are conscious of this and some are not conscious of it. And it's necessary for them to maintain this high vibration that they're nurtured with when they go up. Then Janice tells Canon that they move by thought to a new room and dematerialize and are not separate people anymore. Janice says, we are not solid, we are one, we're pure energy. Our molecules mingle and we are still ourselves, but we're also one. Our essence is energy, like points of light. We're being taught, and in this forum, we can move anywhere beyond galaxies and still be ourselves. Now we'll be able to dematerialize on a physical plane. Interactions on the physical will restructure energy, and they still need to come back to this room to tweak it. And she says this is like being one with God. Then Janice returns to her physical self in a rush. She says collecting your molecules happens really fast. It's all about the vibratory rate in the room. If the physical body is with the wrong vibration and the essence, your energy enters it, it would dissipate into nothing and never be recomposed. So the aliens are very careful about reassembling and bringing the person back. The room vibration must be adjusted before a student can even enter, because if it's too much energy, they would just dissipate. Canon is told that Janice and Ken are both at a master level. So Canon is talking to the teacher master of that particular room, who's adept at vibratory rate adjustment, who was born knowing all this, who came from a place called Zylar. It's an undiscovered galaxy that we don't know about yet. Their normal state there is pure energy, but they appear humanoid to people, but they're kind of a balance of masculine and feminine energy. Canon is told that many physical planets exist with beings and cities and just developed, and they're all operating on energy, and the people there can choose to be in the physical or to just be pure energy. It's up to them what they want to do. They can move back and forth from the physical as a diversion. Cannon writes that this sounded like science fiction in the early 90s when they were first telling her about it, but more and more the public TV, movies, and books seem to be filtering into the culture. She says, as our minds expand, sci-fi is understood to be real. Humans can visit the craft in their sleep or in the blink of an eye and not even realize it. Oh, and this is where she says, you'll say to yourself, why did I come into this room? And this kind of a lapse, she says, you were probably gone. You probably learned something while you were gone. Hopefully where your keys are. So Cannon has gone to some of these places, and every time she interacts with the subject, it tweaks her energy. So this is really beneficial to her. She's able to get to know, she's able to get knowledge because she's told you have a pure essence energy, and you don't have ulterior motives. It's really important that her motives are pure. And the reason she's not shocked by all of this is because she'd been tweaked. She's done it before. If you want to know, they'll let you remember the time on the ship. Cannon prefers to maintain her journalistic neutrality. She tells the entity talking to Janice, I'd rather kind of stay neutral in all this and not know, because it's too hard to be objective otherwise. So the reason Cannon met Janice to begin with is because they knew that Janice was good at explaining the hard stuff and Cannon was good at getting it into writing. People on Earth must know this to balance the energy of the planet, and usually the energy of a person is affected by these trips, and then they come back and they're able to impart it. It's like the collective energy. So this work cannot be done by all. Some people physically cannot take the shift in energy back and forth. Cannon asks about the fact that Janice has a sore knee, and she found a tiny black speck under her skin and removed it. And the ET said, well, that was a device to heal her knee. And because she removed it, her knee hasn't recovered 100%. She interfered. Next, the energy doctor speaks to Cannon and tells her that the energy beings serve Janice and Ken, who are very, very elevated. They have all this respect for them because even though they're on Earth, they volunteered to be here. They don't remember any of this. It seemed like they were born to humans. They don't remember any of it, but they came as elevated spirits to help. Their physical existence can throw their energy off balance, and so they have to return periodically to be rebalanced. Cannon is told her books won't happen until the information is okayed as ready to be told to the public. If it's revealed before certain historical events, it can be considered interfering with free will, and it can increase the negativity. The energy doctor begins to have trouble with the intense interaction of the high energy beings that are telling her things to tell to Cannon. And she's having trouble explaining, and one of these high energy beings takes over in a different voice and says, Dolores. And so she's told to tell Janice to help her adjust to this new energy. Cannon is told that she has entered an area of questions that are about high energy, and they all need to adjust. Humans need to get ready for some of this. So what they're telling her is this knowledge is almost too much, and we have to feel like you guys are ready to hear it. You, Cannon, have to be ready to hear it before you can even take notes, and don't publish it yet because people are not ready to hear it. She's told that she is venturing into a situation that she can't be expected to realize. It's not her fault. She's asking questions. She's getting too nosy too soon. So Ken and Janice are in multidimensional state at the moment, and the energy must be dealt with before Cannon can continue questioning them. So they're telling her, back off a minute. And when they are able to communicate with her again, they're going to be in an elevated state that's a new level for Cannon to work with. So she has to she has to be in the right place to even hear this information. And so they're negotiating with her right now and telling her that you have to be willing to go to a higher level of energy in your work. So get ready. And some understanding of what she's being told is now going to be easier because adjustments have been made. So Janice helped Canon reach up in energy just by their interaction. Now, she's not speaking anymore with the energy doctor. Canon realizes she's speaking with some kind of a mediator, and balancing is done. And Diane Cannon, Dolores Cannon is told that her work may be delayed in being revealed to the public, but that she will live into the time of the Antichrist. She died in 2014, and she'll be able to publish her book with information people need and are ready to hear. And this was told to her in 1991. So they tell her she's connected to the ley lines of the earth. She is occasionally related to them. She occasionally relates to them, interacts with them, the energy. Her various trips that she takes for her book tours are to specific cities because her energy is needed there. She will not lose connections energetically to people that she has touched. That energy never goes away, and they will always be connected energetically. Her energy in the room will always be there. She will learn to replenish her energy at a quicker speed so she's not tired by the work she's doing. She's part of something called the Triangle Project. Imagine an overlay of connective energy lines from Canon to Janice to Ken to others all over the globe, and this changes the vibrations on the other side of the planet. She's part of a connection of energy workers. Not everyone she meets is in the project, but she will stay connected energetically to all the members of the project that she does meet. She's told don't be frustrated when work plans stall, because part of the plan is the timing has to be right, and the things are stalled intentionally. So reservations that fall through, travel plans that fall through. So her job is to translate information for us, concepts that have been forgotten and that will change planetary history. In her book, she is dealing with interdimensional time, so that's a little mind twisting. She's supposed to tell us that everything we do in this life affects all our other lifetimes. I'm going to say that again because I think that's really important. Everything you do in this life affects all your other lifetimes. This is why we're not ready to understand. She's told that if you feel like you need help, like you're overwhelmed by current events or this information or just understanding your own process, she says just ask for help and the right help will come. She's told that Janice has been, Janice has moved well beyond having physical needs and doesn't really actually need sleep anymore. Canon is told that no harm is going to come to her through this work. Not to worry about negative entities and stuff like that. She'll be fine. She's being given information about many complicated processes, and it's increasing her level of knowledge. And Canon says that each of us spreads our energy for good or not. We need to allow our energy to influence people in a positive way, to allow Earth to grow into a elevated spiritual plane of existence. Chapter 14, Investigating the Investigator. From this point, Canon received lots of information, and it's in the series The Convoluted Universe. It shows that even hypnotherapist investigators have experiences that they don't remember, but she prefers to remain the observer. She doesn't really want to have any insight into what's happened to her on a subconscious level because she's trying hard to get these things into books without editorializing. So now this is a session, 1997, with Bonnie, a fellow hypnotherapist, as the subject. But before this session, she tells of something that happened in May of that year. Before meeting with a bunch of UFO researchers north of Santa Barbara, at 11:35, she goes onto the 101 South. Oh, this is Bonnie telling this. She goes onto the 101 South, and she enjoyed this quiet drive. It's evening time, nighttime, 11:35 p.m., and it's dark, but she really enjoys it. And I know this strip of the road she's talking about, and it really is beautiful. And it's dark, and you can see the ocean, and wow, the right time of the month when the moon is at a certain illumination. It's like a postcard or something, because you could see the moon in the sky, and it makes that path of moonlight on the ocean. It's just beautiful. And she really liked to do this trip and look at the moonlight on the ocean and the stars. But she noticed there was no other traffic, which is a little unusual because 101 is a main road. Then she notices there's silence, and then sees a bright flash to the right on the coast. And she's traveling south, and the water's on her right side. And then she sees a bright light behind her on the hills to the left. And suddenly there's a tail end of a big rig partway on the road, parked in front of her on the right, like they're edging into the right of the road. And she sees people milling around the back of this truck, and she figures this is really dangerous. Someone's going to get hit by a car. And she saw emergency vehicle in black painted on the semi. And she was like, what? Since when is a semi an emergency vehicle? Then she suddenly sees a bright light that fills the windshield with a weird strip of horizontal lights. And then there's a big crack in her windshield, and no small hole like a rock hit it, just all of a sudden a crack. And a voice in her head that says, don't stop, go home now. So she keeps driving. She gets home, and she tells her husband the story, and he says, oh, it sounds like somebody maybe was hoping you'd pull over so they could rob you. It's very strange. So now she's with Cannon, and she's going into a trance, and she's going to tell her this story, what really happened. So she's in the car, leaving the meeting, going down the 101, and she notices there's no traffic and how odd this is. And then she sees the bright light again, and she sees the people, but then she realizes those are not people. They're thin and spindly with big heads. They're not really people. They have long necks, big heads. She sees emergency vehicle again, but this time she realizes it's not letters. It's really weird triangles. And Cannon says, remember so that you can draw it later. So this big vehicle, it's huge. It's not a truck. It's UFO. So she says, I'm going up, including my car. There's a light shining on me. I'm going up in a beautiful light. The car motor's no longer on, and I'm in a huge bubble of light. The car is set down, the light fades, and then a whole swarm of these little people. They're not human. They have bald heads with big eyes. They're not threatening. She said they're childlike and friendly and curious, and they open the locked doors somehow. Somehow, she no longer has her seatbelt on, and they escort her out of the car. They're kind of a gray-blue color with skinny fingers. They have 3 fingers and a thumb. So they escort her out of the car, and they all kind of glide into a room, and she's sitting in a recliner, kind of like a dentist chair or a beauty parlor. There's a thing like a hairdryer is pulled over her head at a beauty parlor. And, it's from behind, and it's shaped like a beehive, and it's put over her head. And it presses against her temples, and telepathically she's told to relax. None of the beings is particularly tall, except for one. And he's got a bony head, kind of white, different eyes. Everybody's very curious and staring at her and really interested in her. And she feels they're happy to have her because she's new. And there's a hum in her head. And she thinks, what are you doing? She's thinking this. And they tell her telepathically, you are our treasured one. We honor you. We can learn from you. This is good. So she gets a download of information from her mind. They're taking this download of information from her mind and getting all kinds of information on her and from the UFO experiencers who were at the meeting. And they want to know, they want to pick her brain. They're picking her brain for the stories that have been discussed at the UFO meeting she's leaving, that she's coming home from, that all these UFO experiencers attended and shared what they remembered and how they felt. And the ETs want to know this specific information. Then she's told, you've brought them through trauma to accept peace and acceptance. And because you've done that, it's good work. Now you can know us. So she's told and realizes that she's met them before. In 1742, she was a castle guard in Wales, and she was taken into a UFO. And so she knows that she knows them, and then she realizes that there's a group mind going on here. They're gentle, and there's goodwill coming from them. They take the thing off her head, and they thank her for the information and tell her it's okay to discuss this. Go ahead and tell anybody you want. In fact, they tell her, you must share this experience, that they're here to help. They're here to help balance our energies. They want to lead people to seek help from her. And the effects of all of this interaction go way beyond Earth and this lifetime. They often take people who are asleep or on vacation to not interrupt daily life. The truck that they used was their scouting vehicle, and the lights that she saw behind the hill were the big UFO. They often work with people who live in isolated areas. It's just easier. The flash was a collision of dimensions as the craft arrived in our dimension. They tell her, you would be amazed at how many of our craft fly around and no one notices because they're so fast in and out of dimensions. Often experiencers are not sure and they don't see anything because it comes while they're still asleep, or they'll just see a beam of light and they are made to not remember. Their UFOs hover because if they come actually landing down on the earth, the energy can be bad for them. Sometimes they have smaller vehicles that can stand on legs, but they usually hover because they don't want to touch the energy of the earth. Cannon is used because she, he said specifically, not just for her abilities. I think this is interesting. I'd forgotten I read this. But because she looks down home and motherly, and people trust that. So they thought that she would be more accepted because she was a non-threatening kind of grandmotherly type. The ETs cause people to pull over and take a little nap. Oh, I'm tired and driving now. I think I'll pull over and take a little nap. They tell Bonnie to go home and to clear the road. That's when she had that sound in her head that said, don't stop, keep going. They told her that because they wanted to get this all cleaned up and out of the way. So let's see here. I've got another quote for you. Oh, right on. Oh, this is her drawing of what the ET writing looked like on the side of the vehicle. A few months later, September 97th in Los Angeles, Bonnie is in another trance and is taken back to the same event. She's in the UFO in the chair. She sees that their skin is not smooth. It's got little tiny bumps on it like goosebumps. They have no real ears, no real nose, no real mouth, just small holes. They seem to be in some kind of tight-fitting suits that cover their clothes, cover their skin and actually look quite a bit like their skin. Okay. There's a taller kind that's very white, but she feels no fear. She feels love and compatibility, although it's very strange looking. His eyes are like vertical rectangles with curved corners. They're brown and they cover a large part of his face. They're 3 to 4 inches long by 3 inches wide. He has almost a horse-shaped face without a nose, very thin, narrow body, and loose white gown. Their eyes can see into things more than ours can. That's why they're shaped so weird. They're like x-rays. They can see thoughts and feelings. They see very far into every building. They can see boats on the ocean. They can see other dimensions and see how a person's physiology is working. They don't need to close their eyes. They have a nictitating membrane is what it's called, I think, that like cats have. They see the soul and people's true motivations, essence, and conditioning. By adulthood, their true essence is covered by teachings, beliefs, indoctrinations, people's, and this makes it hard for a person to know his true soul essence. We get brainwashed young. Canon and Bonnie both have good intentions and good motivations. They are helping others to get to their own internal motivations and essence. They're trying to do truth and get to source. They tell Bonnie that the information that they took goes into their minds, which are like computer storage, and they share all this stuff telepathically with many different types of beings. There's sort of a multi-dimensional network of information that goes out. It's like using the internet. Tons of people use it, but only there's tons of stuff out there, but you can pick what you want to know. And some never use it. It depends on your motive and your interests of the beings receiving the information. They're in a large ship right now above the earth and cloaked most of the time because earth people are not ready in large numbers to know about this. They can't say where they're from because they have no name for themselves. They just have to tune into their vibration to be there. They have families. Their own families are in the UFOs. They procreate more like insects by laying eggs. And the eggs have the DNA and all the knowledge that they need already. As adults, they don't bond with the young. The young hatch as self-sufficient. The smaller grays are lab created with cells, so they're a combination of organic and inorganic. Their sexual differentiation is genetic. It's subtle. You don't see it physically. And they do create hybrids. These aliens in general do create hybrids with humans. Different ETs do it for different agendas. Different ETs do different things. Some are trying to save their own DNA because their species is in danger, because some have no more planet left and they're living in a craft. Some need human DNA because their own doesn't reproduce together anymore. So they're doing this for different motivations of survival. Some want a new species that might understand people. People feel violated because they don't realize that they've given consent on another level. So she asks the question, how do you choose people? And they say, well, it varies. Some is for their soul essence, that they've worked with them in previous lives. Some have a rapport with them and their guides. Some do take hypnotists who work with the experiencers to help to stop the trauma of the experiences. So they're actually using these therapists. These ETs are worried about warlike, greedy, selfish people who do damage to the earth, and they realize that most people don't believe in ETs, and their one comment on that was ludicrous. So chapter 15, the conclusion. Canon says this book sat waiting for 10 years before she was allowed to publish it. She sees how she was gradually spoon-fed the information, got more complicated over time. In 1986, she would have been overwhelmed by the information she got in 1996. And she was only given what she could handle at the moment. MUFON used to laugh at the idea of driving a UFO with thought. And in 1998, the Japanese invented a way to do that. Science knows that thought is energy at different frequencies. They know a lot of this stuff. We have a book coming up very soon. It's going to blow your mind. Keep all this stuff in the forefront of your memory because it's coming up again. The Japanese gadget that they made turned lights off and on and start and stop machines with their thoughts. And it can be used by the handicapped, people who don't have the use of their arms will be able to do things just by thinking. In 1998, Discovery Magazine had an article about cloning that had been going on in secret since the 30s and was extremely advanced now. So, the thing is, there's been so much advance in science in general, and so much more of this stuff is public that it's hard for us to realize today, in 2023, that in 1996 even, when she finally got ready to publish this book, a lot of this stuff was mind-boggling for people. A clone is not an exact duplicate because we are not a body. We have a body. People report seeing products of experiments in underground government bases, and aliens have worked with them. Okay, hang on here. The alien said another planet was being prepared for humans to inhabit in case of the probability that we destroy the Earth. It's very similar, and some of the genetic duplicates they've produced are already being taken there. They said human life must be not allowed to perish. Life is too fragile and too precious. So our human species is being preserved in this way. These are things the average UFO abductee does not have any comprehension of. Their genes are very valuable and are being used to preserve life here and on other planets in other galaxies. They may unknowingly be supplying the answer to the survival of the human race. So when the day comes, we will find there is much, much more than the physical reality which is available to only our five senses. We'll find that there are other planes of existence, other dimensions, other universes existing side by side with this one. We'll discover that travel between these is not only possible, but desirable. We'll find that these are not simply crazy theories, but they're rooted in fact. Once we have removed the blinders that impede our progress and escape the limitations imposed by linear thinking, we will find it is true that we are only limited by our imaginations. Then we will be able to loose the fetters chaining us to Earth and to join our brothers, our ancestors, and coexist among the stars. It's been said that space is the final frontier, but other dimensions and parallel universes coexisting alongside our own could be the next challenge. First, we need to understand them so they can be explored. And then she says, Thus, I will continue to search and ask questions, and I will add my material to the growing mass of evidence. The Odyssey continues. The end. So hopefully tomorrow I will read cards on questions about Dolores Cannon and her interaction with these entities. So have a good rest of your day, and until then, slanga foil and slancha.